Hello, my fellow Extraordinary Americans. I'm Cosmos Dar, and this is Extraordinary America. What is Extraordinary America about? You see, American identity is about freedom, the opportunity for a better life, and the pursuit of happiness. However, most Americans are not free when it comes to the financial front. Most Americans are suffering from financial slavery due to loss of jobs, stagnant wages, inflation, and debt of all kinds. Wealth and income inequality runs rampant across America, and the middle class is all but disappeared. So what is Extraordinary America about? Extraordinary America is about the abolition of financial slavery. It is about the financial freedom of the 99%. It is about the nation of immigrants and descendants of immigrants awakening and unleashing the extraordinary within themselves and setting themselves free. The path to financial freedom is through entrepreneurship and investing on the light side. It is about financial education, not only when it comes to money in the monetary systems, but also in regards to how to start a business, investing, especially when it comes to precious metals and real estate. In this podcast, I interview guests, many of whom came from humble beginnings, to see how they did it and how they attained financial freedom in their own lives and how they did business. And it is my hope that you will be inspired and you will want to awaken extraordinary within yourselves and realize the American dream. Once again, welcome to Extraordinary America. Guest whose name is Tina Greenbaum. Tina is the founder and CEO of Mastery Under Pressure, a management coaching program for high-performing executives who need to make clear decisions in high-stakes environments. As a trusted advisor to entrepreneurs and their executive teams with over 40 years of experience, she knows that the ability to think clearly under pressure and manage high-pressure situations is what separates great leaders from everyone else. As a licensed psychotherapist and professional sports psychology consultant, Tina empowers CEOs and senior-level managers with the tools to excel and empower their teams. Her expertise has made her a sought-after speaker, workshop leader, and peak performance specialist. She has also advised successful business owners and executives in the San Francisco Bay Area, including Silicon Valley. She's what I would call an extraordinary American, and I'm glad to have her on this show. Tina, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi there, Cosmos. Thank you for inviting me.
Tina, thank you so much for taking the time to do this podcast with me and to share your invaluable wisdom with the audience. So I know, like you have been into like entrepreneurship. You have advised business people. Can you tell me and the audience a little bit more about yourself, your background, and how you got started?
Sure. So I started out as a teacher. That was my first degree. And I realized that early on, I really liked the psychological part of the teaching better than the subject matter of the teaching. So I went back to school and I got a master's in social work, an MSW, and became a licensed clinical social worker. So for a number of years, that's what I have been doing or have done. Every time I lived in Washington, D.C., Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Long Island, Manhattan, Long Island. Now I live out in San Francisco. And so I started 5 private practices. It just didn't take me very long when I first started to work for somebody else, that she controlled everything. She controlled when I got the money. She controlled the clients. I like to be in charge. And so when I first started, I figured out that I needed to have 7 private clients to be able to afford my own office. And once I got the 7 clients, I was able to leave working for somebody else. And that was 41 years ago. And so I haven't worked with anybody since then. Certainly worked with many, many, many people who have worked for other people and hear the issues and the problems and helping people solve them. So I understood exactly what I needed to do in order to create a private practice. I knew who my referral sources were. The shortest it took me was 7 months. The longest was 1.5 years. And once I got those going, honestly, I never had to do any more marketing because I had those wonderful relationships and naturopaths, chiropractors, all kinds of holistic healthcare providers. And they would call Tina, and I would do the same thing, get back to them. And so I moved to California in 2014, and I had already started a program called Tennis to the Max with my husband, who was a tennis coach. And I was watching him teach one day, and he said to one of his kids, he said, "You got to go out there, you got to be aggressive, you got to be confident." but he didn't have a clue how to do it. And I said to him, but I know how to teach him how to do it. So we put our skills together, and it'd be called Tennis to the Max, where I did the mental side of the performance, because this young man that he was speaking to was a terrific player, but when he would get into competition, he would fall apart. So we started in New York, and then when I moved to California, it was like, I love to play tennis, but I'm not the greatest tennis player in the world. So people wouldn't look at me and say, hey, where'd you learn how to do that? But they started asking me, could you take this into business? And having been in my own business for so many years, and I was married to an entrepreneur, my father was an entrepreneur, it was a very natural place for me to be. And so then Tennis to the Max became Mastery Under Pressure, which is much more generic, not just for athletes, but for each place that I lived. When I lived in DC, it was lawyers. When I lived in New York, it was a lot of actors, dancers, performers, athletes, financial people. Out here in California, it's tech. And so we can adjust it to any industry. So that's kind of the short version.
No, Tina, like what I'm curious is to know is like how did your strategic vision about your career like evolve from like the time of like the teacher to this thing? Because like you started as a teacher and then you realized you didn't want to do that anymore. You didn't want to work under anybody else. But then you had an evolution of where the goal just expanded depending on where you were. So could you like elaborate a little bit more about that and how the vision evolved?
Sure, that's a great question, Cosmos. I like that question. Well, for one thing, I have 3 children. They're now grown, but when I was raising them, I only worked part-time. That was my commitment. I figured, well, I had these children, I wanted these children, so I wanted to be there for them. So I was able to arrange I only worked 3 days a week. I worked 20 hours a week. I had a boundary. Once those 20 hours were filled, I didn't do any more work. I didn't work at night. So I really was able to raise my children the way that I wanted and at the same time work. But there was always this secret part of me that always wondered what it would look like if I lived my potential. That became sort of the driving, and it still is, to tell you the truth, the driving force. And in 2004, 2005, I got divorced and I moved from Long Island into Manhattan. And when I moved into Manhattan, I started to meet these women that were doing like all the things that I dreamt about. They were speaking, they were writing books, they had marketing teams, and I remember there was one woman at a networking event I was at, and she was a stunning French woman. She's, oh, you must come back next time, and I have my new book and meet my marketing team. And so I came back the next time, and there she was, dressed with all her book and everything out, and she introduced me to her ghostwriter and her marketing, and then when she talked about her program, actually what she was doing. For me, I had been in the field for a long time. I knew where she took everything from. There wasn't anything for me that was particularly original. And I said, well, wise guy, she's got the book. She's got the speaking engagement. What do you have to show for it? And so I was just inspired by so many women, really. I became a Toastmaster. I learned how to speak more professionally. I always liked speaking, but I learned much more of the art of speaking. And then in terms of the content wise, there was a driving question that I'm still on that same quest, is how do I help somebody experience themselves differently? Because we could talk, and the body gets triggered before the mind gets it. So if we don't learn how to make that connection and learn to know what our unconscious is actually doing and talking and saying, because it drives the train. So that led me to many different strategies, techniques, NLP, EFT, they have a lot of different names, integrated Kabbalistic healing. I've done, again, many trainings that I feel at this point in my career, I get it. I get how we're put together. I can listen very carefully and kind of know when somebody's kind of moving off track and how to bring them back and what the skills that they might need in order to move their lives forward. And then from that, I love doing groups. I think there's a lot of power in group. And so Mastery Under Pressure became a group program for high performing leaders who want to be able to manage this inner game, really, and come off like, hey, we're just having a conversation.
So Tina, in this 4 decades that you have been doing this, right, where you have been like advising and helping out different people, including entrepreneurs and CEOs, what was the biggest lesson you learned regarding what it takes to be successful for people doing business?
Another really good question. The private practices, as challenging as they were, time consuming, they were very finite. I knew exactly what to do. When I attempted to scale my business, now I was out of my bandwidth, really, in terms of like what I knew. And I don't think in numbers. I think in big pictures. And if you're in business, you have to think in numbers. You just do. So the most challenging part for me has been finding the partners of doing the things that I don't do well and that I don't enjoy. It's not what I do. That has been a very, very costly, very frustrating experience. I think now I'm partnering with people that are as experienced in what they do as experienced as what I do. And that's kind of what I've needed. But it's been a lot of trial and error. One of the biggest mistakes that I made was watching people who were for example, there was one guy who had a very successful marketing company. Mm-hmm. Same thing happened with a woman who was a great speaker. And they were starting new projects for themselves. And because I knew that they were successful in what they had done, I kind of bought into their new project. Big mistake. Because they had their own ups and downs, and I can think of several that I invested with that business went belly up. So what I learned
do you think it's more about like their personality, or was it more of like the technicalities of business that made them go up and down like that?
Well, one I think was very much the personality. The other was also a fabulously big thinker who I really bought into his vision, but it was a long haul. And then he ran into his own obstacles with the business. Mm-hmm. And there were a group of us that were just sort of, again, had bought in, but he wasn't producing. So I would say that was my biggest. And the other thing that I learned from a gentleman who runs incubators for founders, he said, the difference between a sole proprietor and a founder is a founder has a team. And I did so much of this work on my own, learning how to build a website, learning how to do this. Really.
No, I mean, like entrepreneurs, like this, we understand. Like I had to like figure out the website stuff and everything. And it's just far better to just get somebody else to do it, because it's kind of like, like there's like a law that's out there. It's like the law of the architect, where you have to have like a vision for how everything's done, but you cannot get involved in the TDBDs of like the microcosmic thing, because otherwise.
And at the same time, as we know, Cosmos, it's kind of a vicious circle. Well, I don't have the money to pay for that person, and I know that I need them. But so what I have done very successfully, I've done a lot of trading. People who were interested in what I have to offer, and I was interested in what they have to offer. Now, again, it wasn't kind of the best of a long-term situation, but in many instances, it was enough to get me to the next piece, and then the next piece.
You're completely right about like the circle, because when you're at the beginning, you're starting a business and everything, you only have so much finances that you have allocated, and then how do you utilize it? Which direction does it go? Like, yeah, everybody thinks like when they look at companies and that succeeded, oh wow, this guy got lucky or something. No, it involved a lot of like high stake risks and all that stuff. Which brings me to like the next question, Tina, was what do you think are the character traits of people, of like CEOs or business owners that are succeeding under pressure versus like people that fold under pressure, in your opinion?
I think that great leaders, that there's an innate ability to see things before other people see them. So it's like if I'm sitting with somebody and they're telling me a story, it's like I at this point, I already know where they're going. And I can see the walls that they might, the brick walls that they may fall into. And so it's also a frustration for leaders because not everybody thinks the way that they do, and not everybody thinks sometimes as quickly as they do. But that to me is like a hallmark. Like it honestly, it's emotional intelligence. Those people who are extremely successful, I never knew that common sense was a gift. Honestly, I was about 30 or 40 years, somebody said, don't you know that that's a gift? It's like, what do you mean? It's like right in front of you. How could you not see it? And so it's that innate ability, which then sometimes gives arrogance and cockiness, but it's also really kind of trusting yourself, trusting your intuition, trusting your instincts, that you have a pretty good sense about where things are going. And at the same time, knowing that you don't know everything, you cannot see everything. We all have our blind spots. I always say, everybody else knows yours. Wouldn't you like to know them too? And so we have to be open to hearing feedback. A lot of times when I get ready to make a big decision, I would call my brother, who I trust a lot, and I'd say, all right, what am I missing? What am I not seeing? People that have been there before me that know things that I don't know. So it's having that willingness to ask for help when you know it, when you need it. For me, once I see a path, I'm good. But if I don't see the path and I'm hitting obstacles that I don't have solutions for, I know that I need to ask for help. So that's one thing. The other is we have to be inspiring to other people. Being a leader, I always say it's like you have about as much room as a crease on a pair of pants. Everybody wants a leader, and everybody wants to kill the leader off.
It's the ultimate paradox, isn't it?
It's the ultimate paradox. So, they want to depend on that person. They want, you got my back and all of that. But you get too strong, you get too authoritative, and people are going to just kind of want to wipe you off. So really I think the greatest hallmark, as we're talking, is that self-knowledge. And that's my world, is really kind of helping people build that inner level of awareness that builds that inner level of confidence, that you know how to be vulnerable, and at the same time, you know how to say, you know what, we're doing it my way.
So, Tina, I agree with what you're saying, but I think a lot of like entrepreneurs, they have like an ego thing where they don't want to take help, right? Because it's more of like they feel like it's kind of like a weakness or something. Maybe it's just something that I've noticed. But what is your experience regarding that? Like, do you think ego plays a big role in whether people want to take help or not?
Well, I think ego takes a big role in having the guts to do what entrepreneurs do. So we don't want to diminish that ability and that confidence in oneself. The question is, how long do you want to go before you take the time to do the work? Because the world will give you the lessons that you need. We don't have to do anything. If that ego is so big and you're not willing to listen and you're heading off a track, it's going to collapse. It's inevitable. It really is inevitable. So I like to say that we have to be strong enough to be vulnerable, as opposed to a weakness. It's not a weakness. How could you possibly know everything? You can't. How could you possibly see everything? You can't. And so my message would be, park your ego, at the gate, and listen to the people. One of the reasons and again, I think your people will appreciate this, I don't work for anybody else. I'm not great in board meetings and listening to people to, talk to. It's again, because I can see like come on, let's get to the bottom line here. I don't have the patience for that. And at the same time, I have some very, very trusted advisors that I depend on to give me honest feedback. And I'll listen. And it's knowing when something feels right to me, whether I'm going to actually follow it or not, you know? So again, it's that fine line.
Tina, what you said was the last part is absolutely true. And I would want the audience to know this, like feedback is really important. Like the difference between a successful business and a business that will not succeed is coming down to honest feedback. A lot of times I feel like people, like when they're doing businesses, they're promoting a product that they think that they would want versus actually knowing what the customer would want. And it's kind of like you're too attached to the product or the service versus figuring out what exactly does the customer want. Like there was this book I studied called The Lean Startup, where the author of the book actually talks about this.
Yeah, and at the same time, we don't want to live a life just doing something for everybody else. You know, if they don't want what I have to offer, that's one thing. But I also don't want to work in a field where I'm just being artificial and I'm not sharing my gifts. So it's finding that path. And again, that's where the creativity comes from, sometimes a group. How can you take this particular skill? The market's not ready for this. They're not interested. But how can you kind of tweak it so that you can do your passion and your brilliance and be able to market it maybe in a different way? Does that make sense, Cosmos? You know, it's I don't want to give up who I am.
No, totally. It's a balance basically, but it's very difficult to find that balance for like a lot of people. Which brings me to like the next question, Tina. Like, you know, like what, in your opinion, what do you think is the biggest roadblock that entrepreneurs have from, or business people have from being successful, and how would they overcome that roadblock? Like the mental.
I was just listening to Dan, who was the viceroy of Bellwether, and I have a lot of respect for him. And I think the biggest roadblock is not listening, you know, not paying attention, not being open to, I mean, you could be the most brilliant person in the world, and somebody who has a little different perspective can just say, just look over there. No, I love it when my clients just say to me, you know, I never thought about it that way. That's like the biggest compliment that you could give me, because I'm listening to this whole picture and yet I see something that you're not seeing. And it's just a little tweak sometimes. Oh. And honestly, from my perspective, kind of coming through this entrepreneurial path of scaling my business, I'm craving somebody to be able to say to me, Tina, just look over there. You know, I don't want to be right. If I'm not as successful as I want to be, I'm missing something. Because it's not that the content, the product is not good enough. That's not the problem. So we have, you know, in one of my talks, I talk about a little triangle. Okay, so on one side is your skill. All the things that you've gone to school for, all the things that you know, all your education. So we've got our skills, and then we have our strategy. How are we going to take these skills into the marketplace? And this is where most entrepreneurs spend all of their time. But they're missing that third leg of the wheel, or the triangle, because this is the mental side. This is the mindset. This is the knowledge of oneself. It's the knowledge of people that drives everything. Everything. So I would say, you know, with one of the things I say, if you were an Olympic level athlete, you would no sooner go out there to compete without training this instrument. It's an instrument, and it's skill-based, right? It's just as much skill-based. And then you go out there and you have these, you know, you have your skills and you have your strategy and you have your you know, your mindset and your mental resiliency and your fortitude. But then you're, you know, somebody to be reckoned with.
Tina, so this is something that is very important. I would want the audience to understand this, but like I think a lot of people, they're like, okay, I have limiting beliefs, but no matter what I do, I cannot get my subconscious to work with my conscious mind. And so what I wanted to ask you is, what is like a good strategy someone can use to get past their limiting beliefs where they know they should not think this way, but their subconscious mind just keeps
Right.
making
It
them
keeps
think.
feeding them the same thing. Well, for number one of this, they should take my program, Mastery Under Pressure, because we spend a lot of time doing exactly that. Number one, identifying the limiting beliefs. And that requires a level of awareness and consciousness to be able to listen to yourself. So we call it in my business, we call it the witness. It's the witness, it's the observer, it's the third eye that's looking back on ourselves.
Yeah, I would say that what you're saying is correct, but a lot of people are afraid of looking within. Like if you know what I'm saying.
I know exactly what you're saying. And what I would say to them is, you already know what's there. People sometimes are I'm so afraid to look, and I'm so afraid of this. The truth is that we know things so deeply and innately that it's, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh, I remember that memory. Or so it becomes, I would say, be curious. Be curious. Okay. The definition of mindfulness is being aware in the present moment without judgment. Without judgment. So the operative question is, I notice. Oh, I just noticed. And I do this, just in terms of like, where are my own biases, my unconscious biases? And a great story I heard from a woman who was an African-American woman. And she said, when I talk to white people and I ask them, what do you think when you see a bunch of teenage boys, African-American boys with their pants down and, kind of a certain look or a hoodie. And so she asked a whole group of people, and people had all kinds of ideas, and, oh, I'm afraid of them, or that something's going to happen to me. And she said, you know what I think? I think I want to say to them, pull your pants up. So I've become very conscious when I pass people of different cultures or different things, and I hear myself say, and then I'd say, oh, that's your unconscious bias. It's there. Okay, it's there. So now I know that it's there. What am I going to do about it? How am I going to treat the next person? How am I going to? So I'll tell you it's a huge subject. It is a great question, but it really is. You can find your limiting beliefs by your word, by your shoulds. I should do this. I should do that. They should do this. They should do that. When you see a should, it's a belief. And then we want to examine whose belief is it? Is it something that I want? Really do have a whole ceremony that we do, and really kind of naming them, looking at them, where they come from, how to access them. I go like this many times, because you'll see me do this. It's kind of like from the head to the heart, and how do I access that unconscious material? And that's the practice.
So basically, identification, you have to identify what those limiting beliefs are. And then after that, are you saying there's a process you can use to basically get over it?
Yeah, and move beyond it. And just recognize that this is a part of maybe the way that I was raised, the culture that I was raised in, but I don't have to carry it on. I can change it. I have the power to change it.
So Tina, this is like on a national perspective, right? Because a lot of people, like, they have an idea of what the American dream is, and like they want to achieve their dreams and go forward, but they have so much limiting belief in terms of their environment and how much they can do. So what would be your advice for somebody that has an exact vision of what they want, like in their own idea of an American dream, but it's their own, they feel like they are not able to attain it because of environmental circumstance?
So I would say, study the winners. Find the people that you admire. Learn about them. How did they get? I have a podcast called Under the Hood, and it's all about patterns that are created in childhood impact us as grown-ups. I just had a session today, and it's being open and willing to find the winners Who got out of the neighborhood? Who's doing what you want to do? Go and interview them. How did you get there? What did you need to learn? What was your education? All of what we're talking about, and going back to what Dan said, and what I believe, business is skill-based. Some of the reasons that I've struggled, along the way is because I didn't have the skill. Looking for help to find the people that had the skills to help me fill that out. And it's the same thing with good mental health. It's skill-based. It's not natural. I would say good mental health is not a natural sport. It's a learned sport. I teach skills, focus, relaxation, how to deal with negative self-talk, how to work with those limiting beliefs, how to visualize, how to deal with fear. These are all things that people can learn. And you just have to be willing to look beyond where you are and kind of I don't have to be right. I just want to be good at what I do. So there's a lot of help out there. Truly.
So Tina, as a continuation of this, right? Like, people they're trying to attain their dream, but it's all mainly because of the attaining the pursuit of happiness. Like they, from a small age, like Americans, they grow up and they want to attain that. But as we were talking throughout this, the pursuit of happiness is usually hampered by their limiting beliefs. And so my question to you is that do you think the pursuit of happiness is something that comes from within, or do they have to rely on the external world at achieving a goal? Because that's the thing that a lot of people go through. Like they feel like I have to achieve this before I can attain happiness. And I don't know, what's your perspective of that?
Oh, it's a whole different, kind of turning the head and switching the mindset. Because if we wait until the moment of when this happens, we're going to be waiting a long time sometimes. And what I know about high achievers is that they're never satisfied with where they are. They're always wanting to achieve more and achieve more and achieve more. So it's learning how to appreciate the little successes. Number one, I mean, that's how we build confidence. It's on little successes. It's not on a great big giant thing. And you talked about kind of external versus internal. We want the internal to drive the train. We want you to know yourselves well enough to know kind of what gets me excited. What am I really good at? What did I do when I was a kid that was just fun? Doing this with you for me is fun. Sharing the things that I've learned, and that's fun. And the and the question is, would I do it for free? Which I am. Would I do it for free? And yes, we have to value our time and so on and so forth. But finding things that you feel passionate about. I'm more passionate now than I've been even ever before, because the skills that I teach are so sorely needed. We need to equip ourselves with kinds of things that I teach. I didn't make this stuff up. I just put it into packaging and put it through my filter. But these are the skills that we need in order to be successful. Really, really, really successful. And it's not just the limiting beliefs. It's a whole bunch of other things. But this is what I will say, Cosmos. We all have certain patterns that we have created. There are some that are going to get us to great heights, and there are some that are going to just keep hitting us until we deal with them. And the sooner you deal with them, the sooner you learn. It's not a million things that are wrong. It's only a couple things. You might get agitated too quickly, or short with somebody, or give up too easily, or any one of those things that are obstacles. And once you can be curious, and how come I do that? And why do I do that? And who can help me really navigate this? And then you move beyond it. Oh, that used to bother me. Now it doesn't, I don't even get a ripple. So it's a process of personal growth and transformation. And transformation is coming home to the self. It's not transforming into some other being. That's not us.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying about patterns is absolutely true, right? Because we all have these subconscious patterns that are either helping us or hindering us. And the point is, most of the times we don't even know what those patterns are until we do. self-reflection. But as I discussed before, like a lot of people are afraid of self-reflection, but that is how you're going to get to the next level and improve, you know?
And so what I say to that is, what could be more interesting than studying you? Really, you know?
People are too emotionally like attached to the you, right? Like you have to see it from a detached perspective, which is, yeah, but exactly, you're right.
Yeah. I mean, not just, but if one is curious, what's driving me? You know, why do I keep running into the same problem? Why are people rejecting me? Why is this not moving forward? You know, and if we don't know the answers off the top of our head, we need help, honestly, because it is not easy. I don't want to make it sound like 1, 2, 3, you know, just do this and just do that. The unconscious, by its nature, is unconscious. So we need to learn the path of how to access it. And once we learn how to do that for each and every one of us, everybody has a little different style, then we've got gold. I had a teacher who used to say there's gold in there. You know, so if we go like this and we don't want to look and we're afraid, we're just leaving a pile of gold sitting on
No,
the sidewalk.
totally.
And, right? And looking at social media and doing what everybody else is doing and trying to figure it out. And the answers are right here with a good guide.
So Tina, you did this TEDx talk where you talked about befriending the inner enemy. Could you tell me and the audience a little bit more about like
Sure.
the essence of that TEDx talk?
It's pretty much kind of what we're talking about, that I realized very early on as a therapist, working with women who had eating disorders and were very ill, that I could talk, and they could tell me about their mother, their father, their sister, but they weren't changing. And as an agent of change, I wanted to be successful. Like, how do I do that? Just the same kinds of questions that you're asking me, Cosmos, you know, how do we do that? So I went on this journey of how to access this part of ourselves. I did it for myself, and that's part of my story of my TEDx. And then I started, as I worked on myself, I then got a lot of the secrets of how to work with other people. And that's really kind of what my talk is about, that we spend so much time. Oh, I just even heard my son say the other, oh, what an idiot. I said, don't say that. You're not an idiot. You put something down and you can't find it, but you're not an idiot. You put something down because you got distracted. That's what happened, right? So catching ourselves for just these little things in the way that we talk to ourselves. And once you really kind of get into the program, this is sort of the program of good mental health and the skills and the coping mechanisms, life opens up in a way that you just can't imagine. So that's kind of what my talk was about. It was my journey as a clinician. How did I get there for me, wherever there is, you know? What I do know is when you do this work, you don't go down so far and you don't stay there so long. It's not like you don't have your own, you know, kind of roller coaster, because life hits us in many, many, many different ways.
That it does.
Yeah, there's no escape. You know, if you're living and breathing, life is going to hit you. And so do you want to be competent, resilient, confident that you can handle what life throws you? I mean, we haven't even talked about nearly the things that I've been thrown. And I'm the only one of my friends that's still working and still just as passionate as ever. So, you know, I think of that little game that you would play when, you know, that would have a sandbag underneath. You know, you hit the thing and then it comes back up, and then you hit it and it comes back up. That's what we want to teach people to do.
I think, like, at least in my experience, I realized like a sense of like non-attachment, and this could go like sometimes you get so non-attached you don't care anymore. But I'm not talking about that. Like just a sense of like non-attachment in regards to like what the ups and downs of life. Like okay, but for that to happen, you have to have a sense of like you cannot be emotionally attached to the things around you, and then that's what causes a lot of like the grief in our lives, is that we are attached to the impermanent things in our life. Oh, you lost the car, now you're sad about it, but one day you're going to lose the car anyways, right? So it comes down to like ultimately like a macrocosmic philosophy which helps that, you know.
That's right. So again, we go back to without judgment. If you're looking at your books, and you're doing an analysis of your, the money that's coming in, money coming out, it doesn't have an emotion to it. It's just like, oh, I can see the data. That's what we're talking about. And that's what you just mentioned. It's data.
Yeah.
And when we get into judging the data, then we have an inevitable spiral downward. And when we have the spiral downward, we can't see clearly as to what needs to happen. So if you're in that spiral, you have to have a skill. How do I get myself out of that? Okay, so that I can get that sense, and you use the word detachment. I'm observing, I'm noticing that, yeah, this is where I went with that. Why did I do that? Right?
Totally. So Tina, can you tell me and the audience a little bit more about Mastery Under Pressure and the program and about the premise of how all of it started?
Sure. So I think I mentioned it started out with tennis. Well, it started out when my kids were very, very competitive soccer players. And my father was a great athlete, and I love sports. And so the mental side of sport was always interesting to me. And I used to say when my son would play soccer, he was a great player. And when he was sitting at the goal, having to do a penalty kick, and the whole game depended on it, I didn't have to teach him how to hit the ball and kick the ball. He knew how to kick the ball. But what I was able to teach him, or when he was open to it, was how to manage the focus, because he actually should have. The kicker actually should beat the goalkeeper, because the goal is much, much bigger. So anyway, so that's how it all kind of started, all the mental stuff, and started taking courses in sports psychology and putting it all together with neuroscience, spirituality, sports psychology. A whole bunch of things that I put together into this program. So I teach focus, relaxation, negative self-talk, which I call productive thinking instead of positive thinking. How do I get my thoughts to produce something useful for me? And then visualization and dealing with fear. That's the 5 topics. It's a 3-month program. I do it in groups, and it's extremely powerful, and it works. There's some homework. There's modules. The shortest is 6 minutes, the longest is 18 minutes. So it's not like you're sitting down to an hour video that you have to plug through. They're very short, but there's a lot of practice in between. So that's the program. And I have a quiz that you can find. It's called masteryunderpressure.net. And you can take a quiz on where you are on those 5 topics. And then if you're interested more, I'd love to talk to you.
That is awesome, Tina. I would definitely recommend your program to whoever's watching this, because because it just works. Like, it's all about changing the patterns and understanding the subconscious. And so, Tina, how can our audience connect with you and get to know more about you and your work and what you're doing?
So anything that you look up at Mastery Under Pressure, Tina at Mastery Under Pressure is my email. I have a website. I've got the TEDx talk. All you have to do is look at TED and look up Tina Greenbaum. I've got YouTube channel. I've got lots of these under the hood podcasts that people can learn from really, really, really great leaders. So I've got a lot of material out there, but basically just reach out to me and LinkedIn. Tina at Mastery Under Pressure will get to me.
That is awesome, Tina. And Tina, I'm so grateful you took the time to do this podcast with us and share your wisdom about like mindset and everything, because this is really important stuff that people should know. And I'm grateful that you took the time to do that.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been so much fun, Cosmos.
Yeah, I would definitely want you here on this show at a later time. And
awesome.
And I want to conclude this episode by letting my fellow Extraordinary Americans know that, hey, look. Hey, everyone. Thank you for watching Extraordinary America. If you like what you see, please do subscribe to our podcast and share it with others. Remember that the best investment that you can make in your lifetime is in your own financial education, for it is knowledge that truly sets us free. Also, remember that inflation is diluting your purchasing power, which in turn increases financial bondage. The practical thing to do is to protect the loss of your purchasing power and invest in precious metals or the right cryptocurrencies. Lastly, never forget that you are an extraordinary American. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.